all the dignitaries, the speakers, the panelists, and members, management students, and special invitees. It's indeed a privilege to invite you. And before I call upon the distinguished speaker, I'll take 2-3 minutes to briefly tell you what's happening in MMA. The first thing I want to share with you is the IMA National Award for the Excellence has been announced last week, and you all know MMA has again won for this year the best management in India for the 13th time in a row. So you are the adrenaline, you are the one who pumps us to do everything and always cooperate with us, attend all our events so regularly. That makes us really inspiring and trying to do our best, and we'll keep doing. And I'm quite sure with your support, we'll continue to do well in whatever we do actually. And we also want to tell you that we have started another new initiative which will be launching on this Sunday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's Scrabble. We strongly believe Scrabble is a game which everybody, especially the young people who are in the college and young entrepreneurs, young people should do, because it kindles your strategic thought process and your word power improves and you become a better speaker, you become a better writer. Not many think that only the game of chess makes you very strategy oriented, it becomes smarter. I believe Scrabble also does it, and we are indeed privileged to have with us one of the world champion Scrabble who is going to be doing this for us, and this is going to be online immediately after the quiz. We have 9 to 11 quiz, 11 to 1 is Scrabble, and 1 to 2 you have your lunch, and 2 to 3 you have a magazine to read, which we are going to send it to you. So we want to keep you busy on all weekends, and I'm quite sure your wife will be very, very happy with the MMA, but keeping you busy so that she can pursue her work, or otherwise she's unhappy that you're not paying attention, but both ways, wife is very difficult to make her happy. So we can do something good and do that, both ways will be mutual. Then I also want to tell you what's happening in MMA in next few days, so that we do a lot of events not only in MMA. Our outreach programs happen in different parts of Chennai city, different locations, and I thought I'll share with you in case you are in that area in Chennai, you can always attend. On Wednesday, 14th September, we have an event on behavior-based safety. This is happening at MMA Chengalpattu chapter. This is again very interesting event. We have the chapter of chairman of Chengalpattu chapter, Mr. Shankar, is present here. They're doing some phenomenal work at Mahindra Well City, and we're trying to bring together all the industries and individuals and academicians in that area. We want to do that. It's a very vibrant chapter of MMA. At the moment, we are doing few programs. I'm quite sure with the dynamic chairman we are going to make it really a model chapter so that people from that part of Chennai can attend all the events, Varagadam and other areas. Then on Thursday, the 15th of September, we have an event, a seminar at MMA from morning 9:30 to 1, Unlocking the Potential of Employees Using Technology. It's a highly subsidized seminar. We have got some outstanding speakers, including Suresh Raman, TCS, Arnath Babu, Senior Partner, KPMG from New Delhi, Sudhakar Raja, Rajendran Dandapani is the President of Zoho, Rajendran again, Chief General Manager of HR, JK Tires, Banu Kumar, Tameen, Vijay Anand, CTO of Coro Wealth, and Bikram Naik, Head of L&T Infotech Marketing. So they are going to discussing on three important aspects. How is it going to really make the difference in unlocking the potential of employees using technology. So please do come, and for corporate members, it's a special invitation, others very nominal fee. If you are interested, you can check with your office. They will be able to accommodate you in case you are willing to participate. On 16th of September, we have our Think, Read and Grow series. The theme of this time book is the Tiny Changes, Remarkable Results, Automatic Habits, an easy proven way to build good habits, break bad habits is going to be discussed. We have again outstanding panel. Babu Krishnamurthy is there, will be leading Sherpa. He'll be leading the conversation with Nazar, founder of Manna Puts, and Mr. Dayanand is also part of Deccan column, and now it's got Deccan Beckner. He is part of the team there. Then 21st September, we have an event at Bhupathi & Co. As I mentioned, this is happening in T Nagar. Statutory compliance related to employees' welfare, expenses and its accounting, EPF, ESI, PT, gratuity, bonus, TDS, etc. The venue is Bhupathi & Co. It's a link charter accountant. Because we strongly believe compliance is very, very important. Non-compliance, you may save, but you will end up paying heavily, and you lose your sleep and you lose your brand. So that's why we do this compliance very, very, we take it very seriously. One such initiative is what we do. You must attend, especially students you must attend, because you should know compliance is it should be like a marginal costing error. So you can go and check at home what is marginal costing error. Only once in a time, you do once in a time, but that once in a time what you do can put you behind the bar. Saturday the 24th of September, we have an event on Institute of Foundry Man, Ananaga. This again a leadership series. So this is happening at Ananaga. So we have different locations we found. This is our outreach program. We try to lead at 10 to 12 locations in Chennai. Something will happen every day there. 24th September is happening at the Foundry Man. It's at Ananaga. Then on Tuesday, 27th September, we have our All India Management Student Convention at AA Shaping Today and the Future. It's for the management students happening at IIT Research Park Auditorium. We got 900 seats. It's all sold out. It's already sold out. But still, we are taking this program live. You can watch them live. And 29th September, again, we have an event which is on water future Tamil Nadu, pathways for sustainable development, because this is an important subject we would like to think, and we got some two outstanding speakers. Tirupugar, former IAS officer, retired, and he's going to be talking on subject of sustainability and how strategic management is being happening in Chennai. Then we also Janakarajan is the president of South Asia, is again authority on water. So this is only for the month of September. Now I think my time, a lot of time is over. Now we'll come on to the program. All these are happening this month, October, November also, all the events are done, and I'm quite sure you'll be getting your mail. Please do come, do attend. If you miss it, not to worry. All our programs are live webcast, live on YouTube, live on Facebook, Twitter, and it's available on our YouTube page. You can really watch it, enjoy later. Still, we also share with you the business mandate, our article, which contains most of the talks, articles on them with the embedded videos. Do watch them. Now, coming to today's event, we are indeed privileged to have with us another important subject. This is one thing we always believe also, lifelong learning, MMA. So we imbibe in everybody, whatever training method, we do that. And one thing what is also changing, people, every time people lose their job, mainly they lose the job not because of things, because of change. They don't update the skill, and they don't really commensurate with what is happening. Expectation of the organization is not happening, and this is one thing is constantly impacting people, and it's been tremendous in the last 5 years. In the last 5 years, every sector has been impacted, and whoever could see and they could watch on the radar, you could able to think, and otherwise if you could watch on radar, which is very new format of innovation which is happening, a new format of skill which is required. And I think they're saying with the Doppler test, they see it's growing big or small. Growing big is better, the corporate pay attention. Corporate who doesn't pay attention to these issues, they always think, and I'm quite sure many of the corporates are paying lots of attention to this, because we have been working with some of the corporates on this. In this context, the event today is very, very relevant, and we are indeed privileged to have one of the outstanding speaker, outstanding author on this. Today we are going to discuss on the 12 habits of smart skill building, and we have a very, very distinguished panelists. Let me have the privilege of welcoming the author of this book, Prof Bala Shankar. Then Ananda Sheshan is a managing director of Carborundum Universal and member of MMA Managing Committee. And also Mr. Ranganathan is E&Y partner, chartered accountant, company secretary. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause to distinguished panelists for this evening. I request the panelists to please take their place on the dais. Anand and come to the dais. Thank you.
Alphabetical தானே வரணும்.
அதில்ல speaker, you always want to look at that side and ask questions.
Oh, okay. Okay. This okay, right. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, handmade. As usual, the format of the program is we'll be introducing the speakers. Thereafter, we'll formally launch the book, which we are going to discuss this evening. Thereafter, the author will share insights and also interact with the distinguished panelists this evening. And I'm quite sure it's going to be a very fascinating evening and very insightful, thought-provoking. I think each one of us will really walk out of this auditorium more wiser, more smarter, and start developing a skill which will do well. Let me have the privilege of introducing the distinguished panelists and the speaker for this evening. Professor Bala Shankar. Bala Shankar is a management consultant, author, global leader, and accounts director with expertise in strategy and sales marketing across Asia, USA, and Europe. Now, outstanding results achieved in new market regional scale setup, professional team building, mergers in private equity and environments, and managed accounts like Unilever, Procter & Gamble, Henkel, Johnson Johnson. I think some of the best companies in the world has been managed, and also established very, very large educational institutions actively pursuing compelling opportunities in the space of education. Very warm welcome to you, Professor Bala. Thank you for choosing MMA to come and share the thoughts on your thing. We are indeed privileged. The other distinguished panelist for this evening, Gustaf Warner, is Mr. Anand Seshan. He's not new to MMA. Most of us know him. He's the managing director of Carbon Universal. Anand Seshan has done his master's in material science from IIT Kharagpur, and also master's degree in applied science from PhD Technology. He's currently the managing director of Carbon Universal Limited, with a turnover of more than 3,300 crores, company with 29 manufacturing sites located around the world. Then he's also, before taking this position as a managing director, he has served as the president of abrasive and business heads of electromineral divisions, and Anand Seshan has played a very key role in many of the mergers and acquisitions, including Volkovsky Abrasive Works Russia, Fosker Zekorina South Africa, recently, plus Advanced Technology in India, and many more. And we are indeed privileged to have him as a part of our managing committee. Contributes significantly to the role of MMA in developing and how to set the future, and we always look up to him with a lot of reverence. Very warm welcome to you, Anand Seshan. It's a privilege to have you with us this evening. We also have with us Ranganathan. Again, it's not new to MMA. Ranganathan is Ernst & Young partner and is chartered accountant. He holds a bachelor degree in commerce, chartered accountant, and then a company secretary by qualification. He has total experience of over 4 decades in public sector and private corporate sector in consultancy, starting from 1978. Presently as an independent director in 4 public companies, and served as a committee chair of 2 of them and chair of audit committees, non-profit government. Why these designations are very important bringing out, because the skilling what you talk about, it is not one man show, one HR or one occupational done by thing. The entire committee, entire directors, the employees, the HR heads, the employees, and all the people put together what makes this skilling. That's the reason he's very, very apt person for this evening discussion. Very actively involved in Madras Chamber of Commerce for over 35 years, CII and FICCI as well, and served on various committees at different points in time. Very warm welcome to Rangana. It's indeed a pleasure to have you with us this evening. Before we move on and hand it over to our distinguished author this evening, let's have the privilege of launching this book. Sir, can I have somebody to help us to bring the book onto the stage, please? Be there and take a photo of your book on which you authored. We'd like you to launch.
Anand Seshan.
Yeah.
Can you hold it as well?
No, sir, this is come very close.
Yeah, please.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Don't assume they are seeing it for the first time. They have already seen it. Good evening, everybody. Mr. Shankar, former president of MMA, my good friend V. Ranganathan, Mr. Anand Seshan, distinguished guests, and members of the August MMA, and our dynamic Captain Vijay Kumar, and my friends and entrepreneurs in Chennai. Welcome to this event. Thank you for attending today. I did a similar one about 4 years ago when I had written another book on a totally different topic. And I'm happy that Captain Vijay Kumar invited for this time as well to share some of the thoughts that I've got in the book with you. Before I dive into what's in the book, I thought I'll open with a couple of stories, and if you can remember the stories, then you will probably remember the book as well. Last evening I had the privilege to meet someone who you all will know as well. He is a very successful tech entrepreneur of Chennai. He opened 2 successful software companies, sold them, and then he was looking for a sort of new direction in his life to do something else. And what he told me was that somehow the call came for him to start a university. He said he had no idea how to get into education, how to start a university, and it's not a small little kindergarten school. It's, we're talking of a big university. He wanted to take it up because it's a call, so he took it, and then he said it's now 4 or 5 years down the line. It's got up, it's functioning, it's year 2, but he said along the way he had a lot of difficulties because he said he had to unlearn a lot of things. He did not know anything about this industry and this sector and what to do here. He made mistakes. He learned from those mistakes, which was quite an important thing for somebody of his success to say, that his second innings didn't start as well as his first innings. He's probably going to be equally successful, but it's just that what set him up as a successful entrepreneur in the beginning wasn't going to help him completely in the second innings. You can guess the name of the person later on. The second one I want to mention is a Harvard professor of economics and business, very famous. He had another side to him, besides academics and besides innovative management concepts and so on. He was very interested in life. He was very interested in what life has to offer, what is the purpose for which we are here. These are things we hear about from many of our philosophers in India as well. Where are we heading? What have you done in your life? What have you contributed? Nothing to do with the subjects that he was teaching or he was famous for. And he didn't start that at the age of 50 or 60. He started that at the age of 22. When he was a Rhodes Scholar in Oxford, he was cramming an honors program into 3 years or 4 years to study economics and business. How he did it? Every day in the evening, instead of playing and chatting with his friends, he spent an hour reading and thinking in his room. You might think he's an introvert and therefore he did not mix well, but whatever may be the thing. So he cultivated the habit of reflection, thinking, reading, understanding, analyzing at the age of 22 and carried it all through the life. I'll share the name of the person as well a bit later. You're very familiar with the third one that I'm talking about, which is Warren Buffett. He's a very successful investor in the top 5 in terms of wealth.
It's changing by the minute. So.
Exactly. So I thought Ranga was his tax advisor. But
No.
So now he is now 90. He's still the chairman of the group. He's run it for about 50 years or more. His unique credential is his wealth is not from any of the things that we all know. His wealth is not from inheritance. It's not from real estate. It's not from selling products or services. It's just investing, hard-nosed investing, right? So he has talked about his own journey and his own skills and so on. Although he acquired the usual MBA, a good university MBA, and he said there's one skill that has stood beside him all the while, and that has made him successful. Just one skill. And early in his years, besides his formal education, he went on to pick up a diploma in that skill, just a diploma. And he says in his chamber, that's the only certificate that hangs behind his office on the wall. Just that diploma that he obtained in that skill. And he also goes on to say, and because he's a successful investor, we think he knows the mantra, right? So he goes on to say that it's not financial acumen, it's not Excel modeling, or it's not even people and networking, but it is that skill that's very critical for success in investing. I'll come back to that skill as well. The last story I have is about closer home, our own Nobel laureate, who is a person famous for, you name it, he is famous for it. Poetry, literature, music, art, education, social work, founding an outstanding institution which still runs with a lot of success in West Bengal. So now you can guess. At the age of 73, he started painting. Nobody will think, for him it's necessary. He had already got the Nobel Prize and he was to be knighted with Sir, and he denounced it because of the British Raj, and he didn't like the idea that he was going to be the torchbearer of something that he was not quite in tune with. So he didn't take the title, although sometimes you hear it as Sir RT. Then he took up painting. He he engaged a few supporting staff and artists to help him paint. And at the age of 75, he ran an exhibition in Paris with his paintings. Okay, he was well known by that time. People would call him and maybe give him that opportunity. But why painting? He was more famous for literature and poetry. He could have done anything else. So these are very interesting cases that I've included in the book, and I'll see and try and connect the thread in terms of where this topic becomes useful. So why did I write the book, and what prompted me? A few years ago, our batch of management graduates, we had a reunion, and quite a few people were there. And I was talking to, we were networking, talking, and what people have done, and this is more than 30 years ago. Many of them had changed track substantially, very substantially, completely, in fact. And then it was intriguing. Therefore, I tried to understand, at what point of time did the switch happen? How did they re-pivot themselves? What led to, of course, there must have an interest to move from A to B to C and so on, but beyond all that, fundamentally, they invested in skills. They picked up new skills that they didn't have. Just to name one person, he is an engineer and an MBA, ran a successful forging and casting company in Chennai, maybe supplying to people like Humai. After 60, he handed it over to his son, took up a law degree. He's now practicing in the Madras High Court, and he is a public interest litigant only. He does it for free. He's won quite a few judgments, although he himself is not very happy that he's only winning paper judgments. He's not able to implement them, but this is just... So I had many of these people around in that, and that intrigued me to look into this subject a bit more. I went back and researched and got into lives of several people, some I've just mentioned. And then I said, so is there some underlying theme? Yes, skill is an underlying theme. What more is underlying? And then I found out that most of them had a habit of skill building. So you all can imagine that when we are out of college, more or less our formal education stops. And after that, there is no classroom education. You have to find other ways to learn. As an adult, it's very hard to learn. It's very hard to subject ourselves to more intensive, serious learning. And the only way to solve that problem is to form a habit about it. And that's how I linked the two, and I said, there must be habits which help people to learn new skills on a continuous basis. And this may not be just one skill, two skill here and there. It may be a range of very different, every time very unusual set of skills as well. So the book talks about 12 habits that different people employed a combination of all this, maybe not all of them, but a few of them at least. And I can mention some of them like action bias. So most of the problem comes up in our skill learning is we know we have to do something, we want to do something, we want to learn something, we see some other friends learning it, but we can't put ourselves to it in terms of action. Sometimes we would say time is not enough. Sometimes we would say I don't have the inclination, I'm not able to put my mind to it. Sometimes it's a combination. So all these people have an action bias. They get down to it. The other thing that they have is they are not afraid to start from the beginning for a new skill. And I mentioned to you about the lawyer. You would also be interested to know that Vishwanathan Anand, the chess master, grandmaster, he had already mastered, he was a grandmaster. Okay? And then came computer chess, because he was a master of the manual strategic chess. Computers have no strategic thinking capability, right? But he was losing to them. Computers were winning. And he grew up thinking, or he grew up being fed with the theory that you win chess games not only because you're skillful at the game, but you also have the tenacity, you have the sharpness to see the moves forward, you have patience. Computer has none of these things. Computer just looks at the 8x8 and decides what to do next. But there is some algorithm that goes behind it and so on. So he said, okay, I have to be a champion in this as well. No point in being a normal normal chess champion. So he got around to starting afresh. He learnt it. I don't think there are tournaments for computer chess, but I think he mastered it, and he was already winning there as well. Now, how did he achieve it? Because he was humble to say, okay, I don't know this skill. I know something similar, but I don't know this skill. I need to be a student again. I need to be at the bottom of the ladder. I need to start from scratch. So he put himself down to it. So, that's another thing they do. Another habit they all have is disruption. Nowadays, this is a big topic. Captain also mentioned it. If you have to succeed in corporates, now they say disrupt yourself. Perhaps Anand can later share how they disrupt themselves to be on top of their business. So you, as companies, you disrupt yourself. You don't assume anything that you did in the past is going to continue like that. Anything that you did in the past is valid for the future. And it applies to the individuals as well. The only way we will move from what skills we have to another set of skills is by disrupting ourselves. So some of these people that I went into studying disrupted themselves, moved completely. Imagine somebody, one of the top aristocrat scions in Chennai, going and working in a Jharkhand village for 3 years. Can you think of that? Nobody did it, but the President of the United States did it in 1920. His name is Theodore Roosevelt. He had a 6-story mansion in Manhattan. He left everything, went and stayed with villagers, hunted on horses and so on. So completely disrupted himself because he wanted to have a flavor of that life and what people there think and so on. So disruption is another. Of course, people have used networking as a habit in order to learn new skills. So when you network, you find new friends. Your friends are on to other things they do, and then you feel like doing it with them, and that's how you learn as well. Maybe one last example I'll give is some others are totally agnostic to what they do. Skill A and skill B need not be connected. They can be totally different. And they run it parallelly. some of you may be familiar with this actor Omar Sharif. Okay, he's so-called first Arabic actor of Hollywood actor of Arabic descent, came from Egypt, and then became a very famous actor at Hollywood. We all know that. He's famous for another thing, not many of us know. He was the captain of the Egyptian bridge team in 3 Olympics. Okay, while he was still a star, while he was still in Hollywood. Where is Hollywood acting and where is bridge? Right? In fact, you would say he must be crazy to be spending time in bridge, because if he goes and signs up another movie, he'll get a few more dollars. But he wanted to challenge himself, and he became also a bridge tutor. He's produced videos for teaching youngsters to play the game. Completely different set of, so agnostic is another habit. So it doesn't have to have a linear relationship with what you know already. So these are, I haven't listed all the 12, learning on the go, there's a few other things. So these are some of the things that I've covered in the book. Some of you may have got a copy. Please do get a copy, and I'm sure you will find the contents interesting. I have tried to use a style which is similar to what most of us go through, and I've tried not to put myself as a guru, because I'm not, as someone who's experienced it myself in different situations, and therefore, this is a peer-to-peer conversation. That's the orientation of the book, and I hope you'll find it interesting to read. Thank you. We have the second part of our event today, and I have 2 distinguished people on either side. I'll do a bit more introduction of the 2 people. Mr. Ranganathan, you all know, is a famous chartered accountant and belongs to the 2nd oldest profession in the world, I think, right? The first you all know, the second is tax planning, sir. Because even the Greeks had taxation. I'm sure you've read about it, right? Even Mahabharata says there was taxation and money was being collected from the kings. So I think tax planners were already there, and now they are called tax advisors. They are into tax management, tax efficiency experts, right?
All euphemisms.
So, Mr. Ranganathan is a very dear friend from many years ago. Actually, all 3 of us worked in the same group at some point in time, Murugappa Group. And I know that Ranganathan is one of the stalwarts of in the taxation field. He's one of the very few people who are respected both by clients and the tax authorities. I could say that, right? Mr. Anant is on the other side, completely in a manufacturing setup since his early days. Started at QMI for QMI or QMI? QMI, right? Yeah. So some Americans pushed it to QMI, I think. QMI in those days was a very coveted company. It had its very specialized technology in abrasives and electrominerals, and correct? Yeah. They were almost like they are the only one in that, and I think Granville Norton or someone was one of the competitors, and being part of the group, we were told that Granville is not as good a company. So, but anyway, he's spent a number of years and graduated from IIT Kharagpur, moved up from GETs, it was graduate trainee, and then, I'm sure he has a lot of story to tell us, because he's now heading the company, which is much, much bigger than I used to know about it. I believe it's in 32 countries. right? 32 plants in several countries, including some war locations, war sites, right? In Russia, and exports, and Africa, and probably in every single continent as well, right? Yeah. So the group has, the company has expanded. It'll be interesting to hear his perspective on skill building from someone who's built a whole career in one industry and one group, and yet I'm sure he's had a lot of transformative moments in his life, which I hope he will share today. The format is, I probably will kick off with one or two questions to each of them, and then I really want your participation, and somebody will go with the mics, or yeah. Please raise your hand if you want to ask a question, either to any one of us or to the group as a whole, and within the time constraints, we will try to answer as many questions as possible. Yeah, thanks. Can I start the easy job of asking questions? Okay, I'll start with Mr. Ranganathan. So, what have been 2 or 3 skills that you think you learned along the way in these years, and that have had a transformative effect on your career or your life or your thinking towards people? And
First and foremost, let me congratulate my good friend Bala Shankar, Bala to all of us, for having written a wonderful book. In fact, I am little allergic to reading books of this kind, which is self-development, motivational, etc. Somehow it doesn't gel with me. I'm more comfortable reading about old history and things like that. But this book I found has been written in a very unique way. There's a lot of abstract ideas and concepts meshed with personal examples and examples from public domain, which one could go back and check. It's all referenced in terms of the context, books from where he has got it. And everything flows so seamlessly and written in a very fluent style. In fact, he said that he has put it in a very conversational way that anybody can read and understand. That's absolutely right. But it is not a very jumpy kind of conversation. It's a very fluent. It flows like a silent river. So I was extremely impressed and felt very proud that I knew him from long ago, maybe from 1983 or so. So very interesting read, despite it being very abstract. And it can touch you in many places in terms of either echoing something that you could have experienced yourself, or it somewhere catches you unawares and say, okay boy, what have you been doing all along? So many things you should have done, you have not done. So I really found it very, very gripping to read. To come back to Bala's question, what did I do in my career? I'll be very brief because I don't want to take too much time on this. I was a chartered accounting apprentice to start with. And I disrupted myself by quitting the chartered accountancy course even before completing it, and took up a job in public sector. So that is the first disruption I caused to myself because of family circumstances and all that. So it was not very common. People would continue to complete the apprenticeship, may fail in the exam, rewrite. That was very common in those days. Average number of attempts to pass a CA would be 4, 5 minimum. And those who are very lucky might have cleared it in the second attempt. So that was my first disruption. Then when I was very comfortably placed in this public sector as an officer and drawing a salary which was quite a princely sum in those days in 1980, the colleagues in my office started telling me, please don't think that life is to be comfortable here. After 4 years, you will lose interest in everything. So you better move out. Don't work in public sector. This is the last place that you should be there. But actually, the time that I spent was extremely educative to me because the insurance industry in those days used to be highly unionized, and I just joined 4 years after the nationalization. So the unionism was at its highest, and one of the secretaries of the union was actually in my department. So you can just imagine how easy it will be to get work done. So it was a great experience dealing with people at that very early stage in career, managing things without actually knowing anything about insurance or about the subject that I had to deal with. So that was a very unique kind of an experience. Then I took this advice of these colleagues very seriously because all of them took a great liking to me. I was in Bombay, gave me a chance to learn a new language, be in a new place, etc. But then they were very earnest in saying, you are not cut out for this, you should get out. Go complete your CA and progress in life. So some of them helped me even to meet up with some local chartered accountants to see if I can complete the articleship, but that could not be done. So I quit that, came back, completed my articleship and took up a job in Murugappa Group. In those days it used to be called TI Group. So I was there for some period of time. I reached a level which I realized was the ceiling for me because I was not into the managing of the factory like Mr. Ananthaseshan, where you can go up to a managing director. So I reached a general manager level and then I get disrupted myself. I moved out of the comfort of the corporate to consultancy, which is also a little unusual because you normally start early in consultancy. Consultancy is not a place where you can grow, you can go and grow at a later point in time. You have to plant the seed very early. So that was the next disruption. So I did my balanced stint in consultancy, which had its own set of challenges, etc. Now, what is it that I learned as a skill over this period of time? It's very difficult to put it in a very black and white kind of a terms. But one thing that over a period of time that I developed as a skill is the ability not to do work, is to let others do the work. Because the common tendency is for you to get involved in everything. And as you actually go higher up in the organization, you are actually in charge of everything. So Mr. Ananthaseshan will technically be in charge of production, marketing, HR and everything. And the tendency will be, I would like to spend Monday with HR, Saturday with marketing, Tuesday with somebody else. Which means actually you are interfering in the work of so many people. So what I learned is to stay further and further away from actually where the work was happening. So I used to tell people, I am finally responsible. If there is a disaster, something goes wrong, my head will get chopped, you will not be affected. But don't come to me with all small things. So you people work on it. And where you need some broader direction, you come to me. So over a period of time, I perhaps picked up this, what you can call an ability or attitude to let people do their work, take responsibility for the outcome, provide the guidance, but stay away from the minutiae of day-to-day working and interference and correcting the comma, full stop here. So one sort of a larger comment that I would make is, as you start in your career, you should be very focused on details. You can't say as a trainee or as a first-year officer, I want to give a big picture about this company, etc. That will be absolutely nonsensical. So you should then focus on looking at all small things and you should be completely thorough with it. But as you move up, both in age and in position, you should stay away from small things. Even if you know somebody has committed a mistake, don't be particular to point it out every time. It doesn't matter. A few mistakes, nobody will actually notice. Client also may not notice, so let it go. But try to keep the big picture in mind. So that perhaps is a very general way of summarizing my own evolution and what I picked up along the way. I don't know, Bala, if I have answered your question, but this is what comes to my mind.
Thank you. It's your experience, and I'm sure that's what they want to hear as well. So, so I'm glad that you disrupted yourself several times. So there is a chapter on that if you can read. May I now turn to my friend Anand here. In terms of hiring as a CEO of the organization, what are some of the skills that you look for now if you are hiring whatever levels? apart from technical skills?
So when we do hiring, as you said, it's across, right? So we do have freshers coming in. We do have people with middle level experience coming in. We also have senior people with lots of experience
Yeah.
coming in. So apart from their technical skill sets and domain skill sets, experiences, one of the things that at a senior level we look for is how has a person handled failure, how resilient his experiences, his skills have been that he has or she has, that has survived, that helped him or her survive and then still grow in adversity. The experience or the skills to look at things in a very broad manner, the ability to uh, possibly connect the dots, is also a very important factor. But one thing which, at least in the last couple of years, which has taught many of us, is at whatever level, one skill that all of us should develop, should have, is empathy. So, the pandemic has taught a few harsh lessons. And ultimately, it's about dealing with people. Organizations are built of people, and how do we? It's a dichotomy. One side you have to manage numbers and facts, and other sides you have to deal with people, emotions, trauma. So how do we balance both and still manage, have that patience, keep that balance? So I think that has been one of the biggest learnings. The other skills, and I'm not sure how you will measure that, is again as a learning from the pandemic, is the managing this complete ambiguity, right? So here we have, at least in our personal experience, if we are able to, so again, what happened after the pandemic? It's the day after the lockdown is completely unknown, right? Nobody knew what was happening. So you have a situation where you have a complete unknown, and then progressively you have those unknowns becoming a little bit of unknowns, and then a little bit of a known unknowns, right? So that's how we progressed. And the ability to look at the business and have a scenario planning skills. So what are all those parameters that can impact businesses? And how do we keep refining them? How do we keep getting those inputs, taking those inputs as they come in, and then plug that into a scenario plans? So that is possibly one skill that helps people in building resilience. So if the person we hire at different levels has the ability to be able to handle a certain amount of ambiguity, certain amount of I don't know whether it's the right word, unclarity or less clarity. So then the fuzziness, it can't be everything can't be put down in paper. The JD does not tell you exactly what you look for in a person, but the ability to handle certain amount of fuzziness is definitely an important skill to have. So that's what I feel.
Yeah, obviously, speaking from a lot of years of experience of hiring and the, I want to touch upon two things: the empathy part. It's something that many of us struggle with, including me. I continue to be a student of empathy, trying to pick up some amount of empathy. My wife says I'm too black and white. I have to find some area in the middle with people. one of the examples I've cited in the book is about Microsoft's Satya Nadella. And his basic qualification is an engineer from Manipal, and later he did his MBA and so on. So his tech personnel, tech people are known to be also black and white, good in math and science, but the other faculties developed much later and so on. So one of the early experiences he had was in some way a little bit of a tragedy, because he had a child who had some growing difficulties and had to be attended, and then he came into this community, whole community of people who brought their children who all needed special attention, special education. And he said the only language there was empathy. How does one empathize with each other's situation? How does one empathize with the child who's struggling to be a normal child, doesn't quite pick up things as a normal child would? So there is no math there, there is no science there, none of those things exist in that scenario. And although it was in the end a tragedy for him, he lost his child, but he has said that he picked up empathy, and which now helps him to be the CEO of a company which employs 400,000 people, not his tech skills. So it's a very important thing. We don't really learn enough during our lives and career. We probably ignore it. That's one thing that I do pick up from what Anand said. The second part is this fuzziness. Again, a lot of people would like everything to be clear. Give me 3 points, give me 4 points, and so on. In the last 10 years, 15 years actually, I'm associated with the kindergarten to 12 school. I'm on the board of the school, and so many times in the meetings, I would have planned maybe a half an hour meeting, and I would have said, these are the 5 things we want to discuss, right? Because my brain has the same math and science thing. But the meeting goes on for 2 hours. We don't discuss those 5. We discuss 10 other points. But at the end, everybody is happy for some reason. Okay? They all had a chance to talk. They all had a chance to express their views. They all had a chance to understand each other. They all put their views on the table. They didn't feel inhibited to talk. This is all a sort of camaraderie or collaboration that you achieve, which may or may not exactly fit in with hard-nosed business principles. The fussiness is therefore quite important, and you should be able to deal with it. You should be able to thrive in it. Some people thrive in it. You go back to them at the end of the meeting, they would say, great meeting. Everybody talked. Everybody put forward the points. What did you decide? No, that we will have another meeting for that. That's fine. But some level of comfort and collaboration has been established. So it's very important from that point of view. I should probably throw the thing open to the participants, right? To the floor, and please. Just be brief. Anybody who wants to ask a question, just announce your name, please.
Yeah, sure, sir. Good evening, sir. I am Venkatraman. See, I have different views on this skill. One is skill is attained under forced circumstances. And another 2 things, one is when you have a passion, that becomes your skill. And also your hobby also will become your skill. And it's a determination of the mind to learn certain things. Generally speaking, people are not inclined to learn anything unless they are forced or under the circumstances. So, what's your opinion, sir, on this?
You want to take that question, Ranga?
To some extent, I would agree with you. Typically, the human nature is to shirk work. It's you go deep into it, mankind would have very comfortably rested under some tree if only they could have been fed continuously by some agency. But then they had to find their food. So they started hunting, and to hunt you need tools. So they started developing the stones into tools. So this is how the whole process of evolution is. And this evolution is for some reason cannot be stopped. Why didn't we stop with hunting with those kind of Neolithic or Paleolithic tools and get into these problems like artificial intelligence, machine learning, computer? All this was avoidable. We could have just stayed in that same old state. But that could not be for whatever reason. I don't know. There is something that impels you also to move forward.
Exactly.
So the process of skill building happens in a naturally evolutionary way, and it also happens in under compulsion or coercion. For example, the gentleman who just drove me to this premises today was earlier working in a BPO, and in fact, when I told him I have to go to Madras Management Association, he said, "Sir, is it MMA? I know the place. I'll take you there." So I don't know if he had wanted, he could have come into the hall and sat here to listen to this. So he became a driver because he lost his job, which was working in a BPO. So there are so many different reasons how a skill building happens. But the book actually starts from that point, that you don't wait for the pressure or the compulsion. You be more proactive about it, and there are ways to do it. So that's where I think your question gets nicely answered from the book. That's how I would sort of respond to it.
Sure, sir. Thanks. So this is based on my experience. I asked the question. Myself, under forced circumstances, I learned SAP, and also at the age of 48, when my children said, "Bobby, you have to drive the car." So at the age of 48, I learned the car. That also under forced circumstances. So then became my habit of driving often. Thank you, sir.
I've not read the book completely, but one thing I want to say, you have been telling that disruptive skills, disrupting the career at a particular point of time and switching over to new skills. So whenever you are disrupting in the flow of thinking, your thinking pattern also must be changed. That means you require a flexibility of thinking. So I don't know whether the book deals with developing that type of flexible thinking when you are disrupting your career. Can you suggest anything? If book does not deal, can you suggest anything, please? You understand what I'm telling?
I think I did. Let me try to give my point of view on that subject. Obviously, this book does not answer every single question that may be coming up in your mind. I agree with you that if I summarize your question, yes, I want to disrupt, but then I need to have the right thinking mind, which can take me from where I am to the other field, and while disrupting, that I don't lose myself, I don't lose track, I don't lose my way, right? So what is the kind of thinking process that I can build into me, which therefore helps me to disrupt a little more easily, seamlessly, comfortably? Most of the people who disrupt themselves, who have disrupted, probably encountered a bit of a shock in the beginning, not a very comfortable situation. Some questions, some remaining questions as well. Should they have done it? Should they have not done it? Should they have stayed on where they were? More than the creative thinking and the skills, they have the ability to embrace this disruption. And that's not only a brain thinking activity, that's also your aptitude. Are you risk averse? Are you a risk taker? Can you cope with a little bit of uncertainty? Can you cope with some new learning that needs to be done? And can you restart in a new environment, in a new situation? That is more aptitude and attitude than even superior thinking capability. Sometimes too much of thinking actually is not good, right? You will never take the next step, right? Imagine the diver who goes up on that platform to dive into the pool. How many seconds do you think he has to think? It's less than a second. He just has to jump. Okay? I'm not saying everybody should jump, but sometimes the move that you take for disruption is one of those moments where your mind tells you that, hey, you're capable of those things as well. Just go ahead. Just embrace it. Just take it on. And I do understand that in a younger age, this is easier to do. This is less catastrophic for our careers or family or finances. At a later stage in life, a lot more thinking and calculations have to be done. But that is the one that has to spur you. You probably may not need very deep thinking skills. You just need the ability to bite the bullet, which also comes from a little bit of experience. Do small things first. Do small disruptions first, maybe. Okay, I know of a good friend whose family moved within Mylapore for about 60 years. Okay, that's how much disruption they could accept. About 10 or 12 streets within Mylapore. So, if they move from here, they'll move to that street. If they move from there, they'll move. So, those are easy things to fix, right? So you move to a new environment, totally new environment, there are other things that will impact you, that will provide you opportunities to learn. So earlier you start disrupting in some smaller things, the quicker you develop the comfort to be able to disrupt later on, is my personal opinion on the subject. I hope this answers what you are looking for.
Hello, sir. I'm Shankar. I represent MMA's 10th chapter in Chengalpet. And my question is about breadth versus depth when it comes to skilling. So I grew up during a phase where specialization was encouraged and we all tried to get depth in one specific area. But over the years, I see that there is also a lot of importance given to acquiring sufficient breadth of exposure and knowledge across domains. So how do you see this? Initially looks very difficult that if you do one, you can't do the other. But what is your observation? You think, can somebody do both? Is it possible? What could be a good way to do that?
You want to take that question?
Yeah. Dr. Venugopal, both of us are material scientists. Yeah. Right? So, and we realize that material science is an amalgam of materials chemistry, physics, and how we put things together. And more, the world is getting into a multidisciplinary world. I think depends on who you want to be, what kind of and how you discover things about yourself. And I must say, before I answer your question, many of the things after I read the book, I just wish I had got this book a few years ago.
You're not alone.
Because one of the things in terms of learning or skilling yourself about breadth, I found in this book is learning on the go. That's my nature of learning. And as a material science guy, getting into an R&D in a company, one would believe that you would go into depth and then build a career in material science R&D research. But then you look around yourself, you come across some opportunities to learn new things. I got an opportunity to learn computers when there was no computers around. So the fact that I wanted to put my experimental findings and tabulation into an Excel or a Lotus 123 those days and create a graph got me into learning more computers. Then you use those computers to create models when we had an opportunity to get to project management and little bit of financial modeling. And later on in life, when I was given an opportunity to completely disrupt myself from being an engineer of research materials guy into moving into heading the purchase department, right? And those days, purchase department is not very attractive, right? So it was seen as a parking spot. So, but then I discovered that, my skills in computing, the knowledge I had on materials could create a big difference in the way we were buying things, in the way we were using things. So material science still the core, the fundamental is still there. But then you pick up these skills of whether it is computing, whether it is, and then using those computing skills and doing reverse auction and making things much more transparent, much more efficient. And in the process, learning a bit about the business. You had some businesses, then you took it. So the breadth of experience is, I think, picking up skills along the way. And I still remember my former boss, when he gave me this responsibility of running this business division, moving from having managed 5 people to managing 500 people overnight. So I was a little overawed, and then said, you want me to handle all these functions? Sorry, I can't do it all the time. He says, sorry, that comes with the job. You have to handle all these things at the same time, but you don't have to know everything about it. All you have to do is to know who knows about it, like what you said, right? So all you have to know, who are the people who got the skills in those problems that you need to get solved. So ability to get that done, to identify those people who has those skills is very, very important. And then you learn the issues as you go along. So one day you have a labor issue, you get deeper into it. Next day you had a tax issue, you get deeper into it. And then you pick up those skills. So I think depending on what you want to be or what you become, you get into depth or breadth. And in breadth, I found this is, in my experience, learning on the go is one of the best ways of picking up skills.
I would like to just supplement on this, because this is a big issue or a conundrum in consultancy. The global consultancy firms, they believe in hyper specialization. That is, you should know more and more of less and less. That is the concept. So you narrow down the area, but you get very deep into it. And somewhere they believe the clients value that kind of a specialization if you bring it to the table. For example, if I go to Mr. Ananthaseshan to sell my idea, I should know more about his abrasive business than actually he does. So you can't get to that level of specialization unless you narrow it down. Whereas somebody like me, I just hate this concept of being narrowed down to a smaller spectrum. I would like to be around all over the place. So this is a huge issue in consulting. So which model is better? Should I go to Mr. Ananthaseshan and talk to him like a CEO does across 5 different issues and verticals? Or do I go to him and talk about the exact problem in that particular machine, which he is figuring out to solve? So which works better? So there's no perfect answer to it. But having been in consulting, I have experienced it firsthand of this sort of a conflict situation as to how do you develop your people? Do you just push them into one particular area and tell them that you keep spending all your time in this? Or do you want to give them exposure across? More than corporate, this is an issue in consulting. There is no perfect answer.
Thank you. Thank you, MMA. Really, it's a very nice discussion relating to smart skill building. Thanks to the panelists. My question is relating to this disruption. This disruption, should it happen after mastering something, or can it be happen in this during the travel part? Because if you start doing disrupting at frequent intervals in the initial stage itself, we may become a jack of all and master of none, right? Whatever references you have given relating to Viswanathan Anand and these all the examples, they already became a master of something and then they have started disrupting
and they learn something else. So is there any level to which we should acquire some skill and then start doing this smart skill building? That's my question to Bala Shankar. Thank you.
There's probably no sort of one answer to this. How early should you disrupt? You can take Mr. Ranganathan's example. How late should you disrupt? You can take Rabindranath Tagore's example. So there's usually a spectrum when you do that. But I do take your point that do you achieve a certain level of, I wouldn't say mastery, but at least a certain level of completion or achievement, accomplishment in one before you disrupt yourself and go to the other. Again, there are examples of both kinds. You don't have to do it all the time. At some point in time, you will have enough balls to juggle with that one of them you will catch and become an expert and an achiever in that. So it is also related to the depth versus breadth argument that in the book I've talked about. There are a number of things you could do in parallel. Actually, you don't have to move out of what you're doing. You don't have to move out of where you are, your comfort level, your current status. You can do a lot of things in parallel. We don't do it. How is our 24 hours filled? The person I met yesterday who's started a university said he's completely off WhatsApp. Completely. It's a waste of time, he says. And he shocked me by saying he's off email during the weekdays. Can you imagine? And he does exist in this world. Okay. He says he catches up with some emails over the weekend and responds to that. And I know that because I was trying to reach him and I couldn't reach. He says, if people want me, my number is publicly known. My secretary will fix up an appointment to see me if it's a subject of mutual interest. That's the way I still work. I don't want to be a prisoner of the device. This is what he said. So if you look at your 24 hours, I keep getting reminders saying this week, your average use was 5 hours per day. I thought it was too high, but I'm not able to cut it. I would like it to be much lower than that. So starting from there, if you see, besides your core work, core interests, core financial engagement, you have time to do many others. It's just finding the right motivation to do it, to get started on it, finding maybe the buddies and friends and ways to get started on it. We all have enough. So it can be parallel to what you're already doing. You can disrupt yourself completely in a parallel environment.
Thank you, sir. We have over 480 participants watching online. We got few questions from them. So if it's, I'll try and put at least 2-3 of them till we have another 5 minutes to go. Here's a question from Srinath from Chennai. Is it, sir, interesting thoughts you shared then? Who should be ideally responsible for skilling in an organization or the society, the CEO or the HR head or the employee themselves, academicians, public, government? Who should be doing this in the interest of the countries?
Can I ask the CEO? Can I ask the CEO?
The buck stops here. It has to be the CEO's responsibility.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
I would probably add that again somewhere.
What is the role of academicians? Because academicians is one, I think, is underlying that. Because the colleges and schools and that level, if they put the seed in the mind of the students,
yeah.
I think they continue to become a lifelong learner, which he thinks they think. And you also talked about Sai University, maybe that's the reason you were asking about that.
Yeah, so I think there's a difference between organization doing it for us and the individual himself or herself taking responsibility for this task. It's your own job. Who's studying for bachelor's and master's? No organization is studying. We are studying, right? We are picking up degrees. Why don't we pick up skills? In fact, if you start in the morning to evening, if you see what is really useful for us, planning, coordination, communication, ambiguity management, conflict resolution or avoidance. Are any of these things taught in any bachelor's or master's program? The whole day is filled with skill moments. You can only win the day if you're skillful enough to cope with these situations, collaboration, whatever it is. So it's on us as individuals to put a few agenda in front of us and chase them and achieve some level of accomplishment in those skills. Definitely organizations do support it. They are also involved in it. They encourage people to reskill.
Yes.
Sorry.
They have to provide the environment, and the opportunities, and the plenty, like what you said, those teaching moments or those skilling moments are plenty in every organization.
Right.
Right. So obviously when you need to get a task done, when you set up building a business, you know what skill sets are required. But then when I read through the book, I'm blown away by the sub skill sets that you normally don't know or are able to spell out. But I guess, like you said, it's everybody's responsibility. One is organization, definitely. But also the individual's responsibility to capture those and leverage those skill moments.
Thank you, sir. Here is a question from Mr. Arun from Salem. He says, sir, you do get complacent in your job, which you think is very secure. In the present environment, is it safe, and how to get the warning alarm reach these individuals who think their job is very secure? They said many people become, once they got a job, especially the government job, they are very secure. Nothing is going to happen to them. How do you ring the alarm bell in them that you're not secured if you don't constantly upskill your whatever job you are?
I don't mind taking a shot at it. See, this is how life was in the past. You get into a bank or you get into a government job or you get into a company, you take it as a lifetime occupation, and also the situation was that you can't be easily fired given the various regulations, law, etc. But now things have changed phenomenally. I think even in government, they are now looking to recruit people on a short-term assignment basis. Up to joint secretary level, the government has got plans to recruit people for a 5-year tenure. So it's all tenure-based. So there's nothing permanent about it. So this is a change which has happened over a period of time, both because of the environment as well as because of changes in technology, etc. So the onus is now on the individual to be productive and useful at all points in time, that if a particular job is not anymore relevant in the context, he is able to move to a different job and then be able to maintain the continuity. So I would say it is a function of the environment now and a function of the changes in technology, etc.
I think the warning comes automatically nowadays. I was talking to a software person, different one, and he said they only send people overseas on overseas assignments if they have a minimum of 5 sub skills in the tech. You can't be just a SAP specialist. Okay? You may have to know cyber security, you may have to know another part of it, because they say once a person goes there, the range of projects can overnight change in 3 months and 6 months. So you must have those other different skills, multi-skills within the tech industry to be able to be staffed into those other projects. So the warning is there. I mean, I don't think anybody needs.
Yes, a brilliant, very important input. The large number of students watching this program live better take this point very seriously. Take it really, really very, very important point. What is Mr. Bala Shankar brought it out, that you have to have minimum skilling to grow up the organization, at least to go abroad.
Because the rate of disruption is huge, right? The last big disruption we saw was in the turn of the century, 1900s, when we moved from the carriages to automobiles. And that carried on for almost 100 years now. And Dr. Venugopal will vouch for it. The rate of change we're seeing in from the IC engines to the EV is so huge. The different technical skill sets that we need to acquire and acquire in a hurry is humongous, right? The ICT 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was no iPhone, right? So today, I don't know how many of us are blessed in a way that we know still the dial-up phones, we have used it. But the amount of change and the amount of learning that each of us had to undergo now, the skills that we have to acquire, digital currency, right? A lady sitting on the pavement, she knows how to use a QR code, a small vendor. That happened overnight just by demonetization. So these are some of the skills that we have to be aware of, the trends we have to be aware of, and what kind of changes that we have to make to ourselves and to our organizations we have to be aware of and get it done.
One last question before we let you go, sir. Is a question from Mr. Ramanujam. He says, sir, many women are unemployable as per one of the recent reports because they didn't have an opportunity to upgrade their skill and all the routine jobs are taken over by the artificial intelligence, machine learning and those things. So how do these women have become a burden in the society in the sense, if they're not employable, it causes a serious impact on the society. What do you think is the solution and how can we keep our women empowered and constantly upgrade their skilling so that they are not left behind?
I'm not in the government, so this is probably the government's role. I can tell you examples of other countries. Women employment in some other countries, even in China, it's very high. Women employment in places like Singapore and Hong Kong is probably 80-90%. And they acquire skills related to whatever areas they want to be in. In some countries, they are almost equal in terms of skill level. So this is a paradigm shift that has to happen both in the eyes of governments who run skill programs, which I think the National Skill Development Corporation is trying to do. They do publish statistics on women students who've been trained on various fields and so on and so forth. The society also has to become a bit more warmer to this idea that jobs can be done by many more women can be participating in employment. I think it's coming in some fields. It's happening in probably banking. We once had a program run by TCS to encourage women to do IT, right? It's still a very small percentage are in IT jobs compared to where they can be. One of my nieces ran a program while she was in school, high school, teaching coding for women. She ran a app-based program for other students of her age and around her age, just to get them into warm up to the coding idea, to get interested into the IT industry and technology industry and so on. So it has to come from both sides, from the government and from the society, and of course employers will have to hire more and more of them.
Yeah, I have an observation. When I've worked in Kerala, we are running a factory in Russia. Russian factory employs 45% women, and these are high temperature operations. In Kerala, you find one of the most progressive states where women are employed or take up employment in any field. The first, if I remember right, the first truck driver was a woman. You have seen videos of a lady truck driver trucking a petrol tanker. So women, auto drivers, bus drivers. I think it's also the responsibility of the society, because the literacy rate in Kerala is very high because of possibly the communist state they had. Same thing in Russia possibly. So Russia also, if I understand from my colleagues there, the women took up jobs in factories because many of the men during the World War II went fighting and did not come back. So, or they had to make things happen in the factories while the men were fighting on the field. So that's continues. So possibly it's an environment thing. It's also part of the culture or
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. I think we come to the end of the session. And any closing comments from any one of the speakers, Bala or Anant, or anything? Closing comments? Or
I'll probably say a couple of things, but before that, can I ask Anand, do you have anything to add to our discussions today? And then Ranga?
Oh, first of all, I must say thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and it's an honor to be part of this panel, and thank Mr. Ranganathan also. It was a very pleasant moment to know that all the three of us from the same breeding ground. So it's a special moment. So thank you so very much. And as I said earlier, if I had these lessons little earlier in my career, it would have definitely helped.
I would just add that my eyes got opened to the importance of this subject by this opportunistic chance to read Bala's book and then participate in this. It was actually very diffident to be part of this panel because I thought I didn't have the requisite skills to interpret the book on skills. But I think this really was a very refreshing thing for me in the midst of doing few other odd things. Thanks, Bala, for this opportunity.
Can I have one question for you?
please go ahead.
After you finished writing this book, what are the skills that you have developed additionally?
Okay. I don't know whether after or before or during and so on. I'm trying to develop a skill to accept criticism. Okay, trying. Because not everybody is going to like what you write. Not everybody says great. Not everybody says, I mean, in public forum they may say, but I have critics at home sometimes and I have critics outside. So it's important that your work is not always to be rated A or A plus by others. Your work can be a satisfying work for you. So I'm trying to get into that mood to accept that yes, some things may not fire well, some things will fire all right, some things will meet the satisfaction of others. So it's also a skill to develop. As I said, I'm involved in a school, and the parenting and the expectations of children and parents have changed a lot. For a kindergarten kid, the parents only tell them everything is great. You've done wonderful things, right? You've gone to the moon and come back, and that's wonderful. So at some point in time, children will have to accept that everything is not great. They are not doing everything that well. They could do better and so on. So it is that sort of smothering the criticism and offering it as constructive feedback. That is very important. Yeah, taking honest feedback and working on it. Going back and saying, "Oh, Anant is always like this. I'm going to ignore him," is another thing. But if he gives me a genuine feedback, I go back and reflect on it and see what part of it I can take it. So that's the only thing I can say. I'm moving forward. Yeah. I just want to have a couple of closing comments. One is I'll give you the answers for the quizzes, which were in the stories, if you haven't guessed. The first one, Captain Vijay Kumar gets the first prize because he guessed it already. The second professor of Harvard is Clayton Christensen. And you must read both his philosophy books as well as his management books to see how completely divergent set of skills he had. By the way, his book on life and purpose and achievement is only 26 pages. Okay? In bold letters. You don't need to write anything more than that. If you can get hold of that, please read that. And Warren Buffett, one skill that he talked about which has always helped him is communication. He says you cannot be successful in this industry if you cannot communicate well. That's the one thing. Even if you don't understand financials very well, the up-down columns and rows, that's fine. But you have to be a great communicator. And of course, Rabindranath Tagore, you can read about his history. Unfortunately, we never studied that much. I brought these examples to say that any age you can start something, and what you start early, you can sustain it for a very, very long period of time, well into sunset years. One of the other things I refer to in the book is in terms of longevity of life. So all these new skills need not be career oriented, need not be for employment, need not be for gainful activities. We have, compared to the past, we have 20 to 30 years, we live 20 to 30 years more. How do we keep that purposeful? How do we keep that energetic enough? Occupy our mind well, constructively? We need those skills. So it is also post-retirement compulsion, I would say. Okay, with those comments, thank you, Captain. Thank you, my co-panelists.
Thank you. Big round of applause. Now I request our past president, M.S. Shekhar, and chairman of Chengalpattu chapter, step up and do us the honor of presenting the memento to our distinguished panel and speaker. Some more book for them to read. Please come. I want to come and present the memento on behalf of them. Please come. Come.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Till we meet again, bye-bye. Meanwhile, I request Aarti to come and take a bite. Gentlemen, just a moment, the MMA team will take a bite from the speakers.